Good evening and welcome to APTN National News. I'm Savannah Kelly. The first week of the inquest into the September 2022 mass stabbing on the James Smith Cree Nation in Saskatchewan has wrapped up. Band member Miles Sanderson killed 11 people, including his brother, and injured another 17. Our Saskatchewan video journalist Rachel May has been at the inquest in Melfort all week.
The day started with a drumming circle inside the Carrie Vicker Centre, just outside of the hall the inquest is being held in. Earlier this week, the inquest heard that brothers Damien and Miles Sanderson went to the house of Martin Moose on the James Smith Reserve. It was there that the first of many attacks happened that morning. Miles attacked Moose and Damien broke up the fight. Martin called 911 and despite his injuries survived. Miles killed Damien outside. Sky Sanderson, wife of Damien Sanderson, testified late into the evening yesterday. She recalled being afraid of Miles. She said at an event 2 weeks before the attacks, Damien said he was afraid of his brother, that he thought his brother was the devil. Early today, Mandy Meyer of RCMP Communications detailed the process behind emergency broadcast alerts being sent out across Saskatchewan. She explained that communication strategists on September 4th, 2022 received the call to issue an alert shortly before 6:30 a.m. The first alert went out at 7:12 a.m. During lunch break, Deborah Burns, one of the family members, was standing, and daughter of Earl Burns, who was killed in the attacks, said they're putting the entire blame on Miles when he was just one part of the problem.
But there is a bigger picture here. The drugs, that wasn't questioned. Where did it come from? Are they further investigating that part?
The inquest continues next week with testimony from members of the Provincial Department of Health and Justice. Much of the testimony this week was centered on what the RCMP was doing the morning of the attacks. Rachel May, APTN National News, Melfort, Saskatchewan.
Nunavut signed a long-awaited deal with the federal government that promises to change the lives of Nunavumiat. The Nunavut Lands and Resources Devolution Agreement will transfer ownership of the land, resources, and waters around the territory from Canada to the people who live there. A number of dignitaries were on hand for the signing, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He says the deal is part of the evolution of the territory.
Leaders, negotiators, officials of many stripes have all worked hard for years with the same goal, for Nunavut to have increased control for decisions on their land, waters, and resources. And our government will provide funding to be there with you throughout the 3-year implementation period to come and beyond. Formal name for this process is devolution. But in many ways, it's more of an evolution in our partnership as the federal government and the territory, and also an evolution in the progress towards self-determination for Inuit living in Nunavut.
Nunavut Premier PJ Akiagok says Nunavut's most precious resource is their people, especially their youth, and that's why this deal is important.
Today's signing is for all the young Nunavut across our territory dreaming of a better future, imagining what others thought was impossible, and working hard to achieve what hasn't yet been tried. Our people have made many sacrifices in the name of Canadian sovereignty. In the past, too many decisions about us were made without us. With the signing of this very historic agreement, we could now bring decision-making home right here. Upinna.
As a result of nearly 10 years of negotiations, Nunavut finally has developed and signed a devolution agreement for the territory. Trevor Wright explains some of the background.
Today, the Nunavut government, Government of Canada, and Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated signed a final devolution agreement for Nunavut. Devolution devolves or delegates authorities normally held by the federal government down to the territorial government. While it doesn't quite make Nunavut a province, it gives the territory greater autonomy to conduct its own affairs like a province. Changes include a 50% share in resource revenues for the territory, as well as a new framework with NTI on human resources development to increase Inuit participation in government. A yet undetermined number of federal employees will be given the option to work with the Nunavut government in the same or similar devolved positions. This will include much of the federal staff housing that come with these positions, which will be given to the Nunavut government. Jobs that will remain with the federal government include entities such as the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, Coast Guard, as well as Crown corporations such as Canada Post and CBC. Compared to the NWT government, who only had 9 months for devolution in 2014, the Nunavut government will have a 3-year implementation or transition period starting April 1st, 2024. The federal government will also be transferring over $82 million in one-time funding for transitional activities over the 3-year period. Trevor Wright, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
And Trevor joined Dennis Ward from Iqaluit for more on the announcement.
Trevor, busy day. Thanks for taking the time here for us. Can you tell us how everything went today?
By all appearances, everything went well. All the documents were signed. Lots of people were clapping. Community celebrations right after the signing. Cultural performances. At the very last performance, a bunch of MLAs and the Premier himself went out jigging. So, like, it was a very festive occasion, it felt like.
Yeah, saw the Prime Minister up there as well. So what do the people of Nunavut think about this all?
The average person, I don't really have a read on, but all the people involved in devolution seem to be optimistic about how things are going. Like, as to how devolution will actually turn out, I think we will have to wait until we see the results.
Well, like you mentioned, celebrations have happened, papers have been signed. Well, what happens next?
A lot of legislation. The Nunavut legislature during its next sitting is going to have to adapt to this new framework, and the implementation period itself, it's 3 years and it begins on April 1st. So in comparison, the government of the Northwest Territories back in 2014, when they devolved, they only had 9 months. So a lot more breathing room in this agreement this time around.
Well, Trevor, looking forward to your continued reporting on this. Appreciate you taking a few minutes for us here.
Thank you.
The Whitehorse Correctional Center has a history of lawsuits involving Charter of Rights violations. Now another inmate is alleging he was illegally placed in segregation. Our reporter Sarah Connors has the details.
The lawyer for Norman Kindy has filed an application for a judicial review alleging his client, an Indigenous man, was illegally placed in a segregation unit. 19-year-old Norman Kindy was charged with first-degree murder in the death of Aaron Smarch last year and is awaiting trial. According to the December 28th application, a correctional officer instructed Kindy to enter his cell for lockup without the authority to do so. This led to Kindy getting into an altercation with the officer, and while entering his cell, he threw cold coffee at them. The application claims the officer retaliated by punching Kindy and placing him in several chokeholds. Kindy was transferred to the jail's arrest processing unit and then to segregation. The application states Kindy was placed in segregation out of retaliation and was not granted the required hearing before a discipline committee. Kindy's lawyer, Vincent La Rochelle, says the measures taken by the jail are problematic.
If it's feeling aggrieved by the conduct of an inmate, needs to go before an independent arbiter so that person can decide who's right, who's wrong. Is the CO right? Is the prisoner right?
La Rochelle says the jail has a track record of charter violations involving segregation. In 2019, the Supreme Court of Yukon ruled the jail's secure living units amounted to separate confinement. It also found the jail didn't have the authority to create those units. Perhaps the most well-known is a 2014 incident where Michael Niehaus, an inmate who spent years in solitary confinement, was dragged naked in front of a judge. The incident led to an independent 2018 inspection report which recommended reforms on the jail's use of segregation. Kindy has since been placed back into general population. His lawyer says it's now up to his client to decide whether or not to push the case forward. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
According to a spokesperson for the Territory's Justice Department, an internal review shows that proper use of force and procedures were followed, and there will be no further comment. The daughter of a woman whose remains are suspected to be in a Winnipeg area landfill has filed 2 human rights complaints against the former Progressive Conservative government in Manitoba and the newly elected NDP under Premier Wab Kinew. Cambria Harris submitted the complaints on behalf of her mother, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and an unidentified woman called Buffalo Woman. All 3 are believed to be victims of an alleged serial killer. Harris's claims refer to the 2023 provincial election where the PC party campaigned on its position not to search the landfills, and against the current NDP government for allegedly refusing to fund a search. Nahani Fontaine is Minister of Gender Equity.
Our Premier, Wab Kinew, has made it explicitly clear that he, as the Premier, is committed to searching the landfill. And we have put measures in place to ensure that folks know, that families know that we are committed to that, including apologizing to the families for what the PCs did during the 2023 election and starting that relationship with the families in a good way.
We need to step aside for a short break, but coming up, a new research study to better detect and prevent the spread of tuberculosis. Welcome back to APTN National News. A new research study announced from Iqaluit. The city, the Nunavut government, and Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated announced a new partnership with the Ottawa Hospital Research Institute to better detect and prevent the spread of tuberculosis early. The Taima TB wastewater study will be testing Iqaluit's wastewater for TB year-round for the next 5 years. The study aims to see whether or not earlier public health interventions will assist in treating TB early. The Canadian Institute of Health Research contributed $3 million to go towards the study, while NTI contributed $500,000. According to Nunavut's top doc, this initiative expands on past wastewater testing initiatives.
Now, this initiative is really quite groundbreaking and stems from perhaps one of the more interesting aspects of the pandemic, where screening was undertaken on wastewater, and that's now been extended to other areas besides infectious diseases like COVID, to drugs, and of course now to TB.
At a press conference on Wednesday, the Alberta government announced a new $13 million shelter for houseless people who are being displaced by the dismantling of encampments. APTN's Chris Stewart has the details.
There is a new place for people needing shelter. In Edmonton, police tore down their encampments. According to a plan released by the province, the shelter, now open, will be at the Care Centre, part of the nonprofit Hope Mission in downtown Edmonton. The province says 1,771 beds are available across the city's shelters. Alberta Social Services Minister Jason Nixon is calling the facility a navigation centre where lockers will be available, pets will be welcomed, and cultural supports and detox help will be available. The centre will bring people to shelters across the city where there is capacity.
I want to be very clear that the Support Navigation Centre is not designed to replace the considerable support and emergency shelter system that is already in place in Edmonton, but to bring all that support system together to provide wraparound services to individuals coming out of encampments.
Edmonton Police Chief Dale McPhee said his department's goal will be to dismantle every encampment and tent. But everyone displaced gets a heated bus ride with their possessions to the new navigation centre.
Encampments are not safe, and stop. In no way is it compassionate or responsible to allow people, vulnerable community members who are already in the throes of mental health and addictions issues, to continue to live in these circumstances.
He says keeping encampments alive has caused too many deaths and injuries.
Tent fire shop, bicycle chop shops, sudden deaths, weapon caches, open-air drugs, gang activity. people burning to death alive, people freezing to death. In our front lines, not only police but emergency services respond to these every day, and quite frankly, enough is enough.
Confederacy of Treaty 6 First Nations Grand Chief Cody Thomas says that now, amid some of the coldest temperatures on record for Alberta, is the time to act.
Our members are dying. Individuals downtown are dying. Like, what are we doing as humanity to allow them to kill themselves in front of us? And we have an opportunity to stop turning the blind cheek and finding solutions to the problem.
The minister says he expects the Navigation Center to be a multi-year effort. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
A woman from Barons River First Nation in north-central Manitoba has been transported to Winnipeg with her grandchildren after a viral social media post revealed extreme living conditions on reserve. Tamara Pimentel has this story.
To people, counselors, I need somebody to come and look up my house, what conditions I have here.
Marva George of Barons River First Nation says it took this viral Facebook post to get any help with poor living conditions that worsened in the recent cold weather. Broken baseboard heaters led to frozen pipes, which may have led to sewage backing up into the only bathtub and toilet in her house.
There's lack of housing back home, like in my community, crowded homes, and there's probably more than 10, 15 people in the house. My condition with my health, I'm in a wheelchair, and it's kind of hard at times, but I just always think about my grandkids.
8 family members live in this home, and George says the sewage has been backed up now for over 3 weeks.
I had to live the old ways. I had to get a pail for them just to use the washroom. I told my kids, this is how we lived long ago, I said, before we had running water.
To complicate things further, George had her leg amputated in early 2023. She undergoes dialysis regularly. She says after multiple pleas for help with her home, Jordan's principal relocated her and her 3 grandchildren to a wellness center in Winnipeg earlier this week.
Because I needed people to hear me out, that I needed help because of the condition of my house, because we need to live in a better environment when we have kids and when you have health problems. We don't deserve to live like that.
According to Statistics Canada, Indigenous people are 3 times more likely to live in a home in need of major repairs than the non-Indigenous population. George said she wants to see her leadership visit homes regularly to keep an eye on housing. Barons River Chief and Council have not responded to multiple requests for comment. George says there is no room for dialysis treatment in Winnipeg. She has to travel to Selkirk, north of the city. She isn't sure how long her and her grandchildren will be away from home, but hopes to return to a functioning washroom and proper heating to get through the rest of the winter. Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
APTN and Sportsnet are teaming up once again to bring you Hockey Night in Canada in Cree. We'll tell you more after the break. Stay with us. APTN and Sportsnet have teamed up once again to bring you Hockey Night in Canada in Cree.
Good evening and wow to Hockey Night in Canada in Cree on APTN.
Hockey Night in Canada in Cree has been a big hit in previous seasons, and it helps APTN meet its mandate to revitalize Indigenous languages. Play-by-play announcer Clarence Iron will be back with line mates Earl Wood, John Chabot, and Jason Chamakis right here in the APTN studio. The first show hits the airwaves January 27th when the Toronto Maple Leafs visit the current league leading Winnipeg Jets at 7 p.m. Eastern. Be sure to tune into that. Exciting to have Hockey Night in Canada back here at APTN in Cree. And that's all the time we have for you this Saturday on APTN National News. For news anytime, head over to our website at aptnnews.ca. I'm Savannah Kelly, Marcy Miigwech. Thank you for joining us. Take care and have a great night.